Yeah.
It does, right?
Yeah.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am Kathy Burnett here with JL and Alex Bracken to talk about JL's new book and whatever else they want to talk about. Brainler Books is a small independent bookstore in South Bend, Indiana. We focus mostly on books that uplift BIPOC, LGBTQ, and disabilities, working with schools and organizations to help them bring in more well-rounded literature so everyone can not only see themselves in books, but the people who are normally in books have an opportunity to see what other people can do, that we all have agency and that together we can actually do more than we can do separately. So I'm going to read the code of conduct. I'll give you the bios for the authors and then we'll turn it right over to them. All right. At Brainler Books, we aim to build a stronger community centered around the discussion of inclusive literature. Our goal is to create an environment where traditionally marginalized voices feel welcome to participate, speak up, ask questions, and engage in conversation. This requires a harassment free and inclusive environment that recognizes the inherent worth of every participant. We invite all of those who participate to help us create a safe, positive experience for everyone. All right. So we have JL up first. If you have not read Wings of Ebony, I don't know why you're here, but you need to make sure you get that right after that. You look at that incredible cover. It's so beautiful. I love it. That's my Halloween costume. All right. JL is the author of the instant New York Times and indie bestseller Wings of Ebony, a YA novel about a Black teen who must lean into her ancestors' magic to protect her inner city community from drugs, violence, and crime. Miss Magazine calls it the debut fantasy we need right now, and we do. It was really powerful for me coming from the South Side of Chicago. She also wrote a sequel, which we're going to talk about a lot today, Ashes of Gold. Elle is a former educator, makes sense, and first generation college student with a bachelor's degree in journalism and a master's in educational administration and human development. When she's not writing, she can be found mentoring aspiring writers, binging reality TV, loving on her three littles, or cooking up something true to her Louisiana roots, which you feel free to do some demonstration cooking too. We're open for that. Right. Alexandra Bracken was born in Phoenix, Arizona. The daughter of a Star Wars collector, she grew up going to an endless string of Star Wars conventions and toy fairs, which helped spark her imagination and a deep love of reading. After graduating high school, she attended the College of William and Mary in Virginia, where she double majored in English and history. She sold her first book, Brightly Woven, as a senior in college. Whoa, I didn't know that part. And later moved to New York City to work in children's book publishing, first as an editorial assistant, then in marketing. After 6 years, she took the plunge and decided to write full time. She now lives in Arizona with her tiny pup Tennyson, and a house that's constantly overflowing with books. I'm so excited for both of you. Both of you double majors, so I love that. Women who
Yeah.
are just doing all the things and also embracing writing as the thing that you do. That's just so powerful, I think, for a lot of young people to see that this is something that they could also do. It doesn't have to be what people say, you just write in the middle of the night all the time and no other time. Like this could
Yeah.
be a job. You could work up to actually doing this thing. So thank you both for being here. I'm gonna get off the stage right now and let you two have a talk. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for that intro. That was awesome.
It was.
I
Hello,
love that code of
friends.
conduct too. That was
It was really thorough,
yeah.
I thought.
Yeah. Hi,
Mm.
Jess.
Hi, it's so good to see
It's
you.
so good to see you too. So I have to warn you guys that I will probably mute myself on and off. This is like peak delivery time, and so Tenny goes a little crazy when he guards the house. And also, I am being stalked by the Girl Scouts in the neighborhood because it's Girl Scout cookie time. They are relentless. I have so this is
Bye.
roughly the time when they start coming
Bye,
by, and I have to hide in the back of the house. So I was like, I can't buy anymore. Sorry. So just wanted to get that out of the way. But yeah, I am so excited to be here with you, Jess. We had such a blast when we chatted last year. It's hard to believe it's been that much time already.
Yeah,
That went by so fast.
it really did. It really did. I still can't believe that one of my books has been in the world for an entire year.
Mm-hmm.
Wild.
Well, I want to talk about your debut year a little bit too, a little later on. I have a couple questions for you that I want to kind of start us off with, just, to get things rolling. And I figure you and I, we just will like go on and on forever about everything else. So if you guys have any questions for us or any questions for Jess, just go ahead and leave them in the comments. We can see them. They kind of populate on the side of our screen, and I will be happy to ask her. So, okay. So the very first thing I was going to ask you to do was, if we have anyone who's joining us who hasn't read the first book, Wings of Ebony, and is really interested in starting this amazing duology, will you give us kind of like a quick pitch for the series, or as long of a pitch as you want? I won't put that constraint on you.
Sure.
Whatever feels good.
I would say a pretty spoiler-free pitch would be book one is about Rue, who is an inner city teen from Houston, from a fictitious neighborhood called East Row. And after her mother is murdered, she's whisked away by the father she never knew to an island of magic wielders, where no one looks like her, and her father that she never knew is forcing her to stay there and sort of get acquainted with this new place. And she does make a friend while there, but she really misses home. So on the anniversary of her mother's death, she sneaks back to Houston with her friend's help to leave a gift for her little sister who she had to leave behind. And then things just sort of blow up literally. So that's in chapter one. And so her returning, she was just going to leave a gift and then like sneak back. And that just doesn't go that way. So trouble erupts. And basically what unfolds is sort of the consequences of her saving her sister's life. And that ends up taking her on this wild journey of discovery of who she really is and what she's really capable of. She faces off against an antagonist who is threatening her home neighborhood. The sequel picks up, and it picks up almost where the first book left off, and it takes place mostly on the magical island. So this one has a lot more like magic and action in it, and she is basically dealing with a second protagonist antagonist who you sort of meet in the first book, but in this book, the person who colonized the island, who like created this magical city of Gazan, she faces off against him to try to find a way to restore her people's magic, because it does turn out that she is not the only person who's capable of magic, but she's the only one with magic. So book two is her figuring out how to fix that. And yeah, it's also, I would say book two is probably the more romantic one, because there is a love triangle, but in the first book, the love triangle definitely plays like second priority to the main plot, because the main plot is very, it deals with racism, and I wanted that to be dealt with sort of an urgency and a focus. But I plant the seed so that in book two, we really get to dive into that love triangle and see who Rue's true love is. So.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm going to ask you about the love triangle in a minute. So get excited. So like Rue is such a dynamic character. She just is like physically and emotionally tough. And she has this like very raw humanity to her. So I'm wondering how you approached her arc over the two books. Like, was there something you knew you wanted her to achieve in the first book before you moved on to the second book? Or were you really thinking about them as being, one continuous growth arc? If that makes sense.
It does. I admittedly would say I would storyboard more intentionally next time. I will admit that. But in book one, I was really focused on building up Rue's awareness of who she is, and like who she is complex to her because she was raised by her mother and she didn't know her father. But that doesn't negate the fact that her father and his heritage and these magical people are a part of who she is. But because of her anger towards him, she sort of shunned that side of her heritage, and she needs to break through that wall emotionally to be able to really embrace all that she's capable of. So in book one, it was sort of realizing who she is and embracing all of who she is and all of the sort of emotional baggage that comes with that, grieving her mother's death, forgiving her father, etc. But in book two, you start with this heroine who is seemingly unstoppable. Like Rue is this powerhouse at the end of book one. And I remember sitting down, Alex, with notes, and I was like, okay, let's plot this arc. And I was like, how? But she's like perfect.
It's so tough.
She's not perfect. So then I had to like peel back her layers, because Rue definitely is very strong and she's strong, but she also has this sort of toughness to her. And I worked very hard to peel that layer back in book one and show the softness beneath, like
Yeah.
the love for her family, the love for her community, how this sort of outward toughness is sort of a defense mechanism because it's how she's been forced to navigate in the world. But
Yeah.
like inside, she's mushy and sweet and soft and
Yeah.
caring. So in book 2, I said, okay, let's dig deeper into her vulnerability and figure out what she's going to struggle with. So in book 2, I decided, what do you do? I decided to make her arc more about like, what do you do when you're a fish out of water? So she's away from home now. She's away from everything familiar and she's fighting a fight. And she's never seen anyone succeed in what she's trying to do before. So she's never seen anyone that looks like her or even knows anyone who's done what's being thrust upon her shoulders. And that's incredibly intimidating. So she's being forced to like pivot and sort of perform in a way that doesn't feel natural to her. And so she is hesitant to do that. So in the book 1, she's sort of embracing who she is, her identity. And then book 2, she's understanding what being Gazani actually means and learning to step into that person fully.
I love that. That's such a like emotionally satisfying and compelling way to approach the chosen one aspect of the book. Like I can't wait to read the second book. I'm so excited. When you said more romance, I was like, oh, I'm so glad I saved this post revisions. This is my reward. So Wings of Ebony tackles some like very weighty and important themes and topics, including, colonization, gentrification, systemic racism. And you do it in such, it's just like gutting to read. And you like the way you've approached it and how you've blended it into this kind of fantasy world. I'm just wondering, I assume that all of these things are continually explored in the sequel as well, and you deepen and expand upon them. But I'm wondering if there's like any aspect of the world or any aspect of the magic or even themes that you were really looking forward to sinking your teeth into for book 2. Like what can we expect in terms of like how you're going to rip our hearts out emotionally and make us weep like children? Because that's what happened to me when I read the first book.
That is my brand. I try to make readers cry. You will cry in the sequel. Sorry, not sorry. Book 2, I wanted it to be super twisty. I really wanted to like flex my plot muscles in this book and just really play with like stringing readers' expectations along and like writing twists that make readers like literally like, okay, I said one more chapter, but I'm going to read another. I have to know, like, like I wanted people audibly gasping and like throwing the book if they want.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted like emotional reactions. So I definitely dug in to make it as twisty as possible. Thematically, I would say one of the interesting things that I was able to do with this book is really dig into the history of an island that was colonized and look into, now this is all fictitious, but I wanted to really kind of look into what that history looks like and when the people who are in power wield their power, how it can put everyone and people who thought they were enemies, people who thought they were allies on interesting sides of the table, how there are no perfect choices and how good people can make bad decisions. I wanted to create a very like complex sort of story and then make sure that it points to sort of the source of all of that is this terrible colonizer who obviously did this all. But I wanted to paint a very like realistic tapestry of like, I picture it as like paint dripping down a wall, like everything that bleeds from that situation creates all kinds of characters. So there are new characters in this book.
Ooh.
And again, there's lots of twists and turns, but there are new characters in this book. So you do get some fresh cast. You get a deeper look into the Gazani world. You learn more about their tribe. The prologue actually is one of my favorite parts of the story. And it is a scene, a very short scene from before the island was colonized. So you get to like jump into book 2 and get a glimpse of what Gazan was like when Rues people roamed the island freely.
Oh, wow.
Through the eyes of a little girl who, it's the morning of her turning out ceremony where she becomes a woman. And I won't spoil the prologue. It's actually up on places. I think we did a reveal on tour or something. So you can like Google like Ashes of Gold prologue and read it. But like, I love this idea of introducing the world introducing the reader to the world so they understand this is what was lost, so that you understand what we're fighting for in this book.
I love that. And also it's like devastating me already just hearing about it. So I'm excited, but also dreading reading it. We'll just like park a box of tissues right next to me before I dive in. But like one of the ways that you really, like one of the ways that you've like created the tapestry that you're talking about is through your supporting characters. And so I'm really excited that there are new characters that we get to meet and interact with, but I'm wondering if you have a favorite supporting character. I think mine is probably Rue's little sister, Tasha, but I love the boys. I love Trace and Jamal. What a choice Rue has to make. Oh, well, that's a spoiler. I was going to ask if she makes a definitive choice between the two of them, but I guess what I'll ask instead is,
by the end, every reader will be able to say who Rue's true love is.
Okay.
I mean, like, people may disagree. I can't say that they'll all think the same thing. Everyone will have a definitive answer by the end of the book.
Okay, if you were choosing for yourself, not Rue, like removing Rue from the equation, which of the boys would you choose?
I can't pick.
I know. It's hard too, because it's like when they're your characters, you're like, oh, I always am like, I don't really think about them that way.
Well, because I know everything.
Yeah.
So no, I can't pick. I refuse. I actually agreed at some event I did last week. Somebody was like, well, can you tell us in a month after release, can you then publicly admit who your ship favorite is? And I was like, sure, in a month, but not like right away.
Yeah, not right now. Okay. I'll come back to you about this because I can't wait to read it and see who she picks. And I'm glad that, or not even just picks, but like who her true love is. I think that's like even better.
I'm trying to think of who my favorite character is in the second book. That's hard. Gosh, there's so many of them are so gray. So like I'm a little nervous to be like this person, and then people have read it and be like, really? Because they're kind of, anyway. So I found Tavi very, very intriguing to write, as well as Kai. Kai is someone you meet in the very beginning. She's a Yakana warrior, a descendant from the ancestors. She's like from their direct bloodline lineage. And the Yakana are a clan within the Gazani that are all like female warriors, and they have a very like sister-like bond. They don't even take on husbands. Like if they do, it's in servitude only. Like they're like I mean, yeah, they're
tell me more. I love this.
I know they need their own book.
Yeah, they do need their own book. Like
I seriously could write so much from there. But so Kai is sort of their unofficial leader. And then Tavi, I can't say who that is without spoiling things, but Tavi was very interesting to write because there are no easy choices for her. And so it was interesting making her choose true to her character, knowing what that would do to the story. Like, it was just like, I'm really writing this because this is what she would actually do.
Yeah.
So here we go. We're just going to make this mess and see what happens.
I love all of the instant reactions we're getting to the characters, to Kai and to Tavi.
So many of them too. I see some friends. My mom is in the chat too. Hi, Mom.
Oh, hi. Okay, so tell me, pandemic aside, if you can, I don't actually, now that I've said that, I'm like, you can't actually set the pandemic aside from your debut year experience. But, aside from still being, stuck in a global pandemic, how was your experience as a debut author? Was there anything about it that really surprised you that you weren't expecting, or how was it? Tell me.
I know this is going to sound incredibly odd, and I'm sure you get this. I mean, you've been in this author game a lot longer than I have, but like when you really actually realize, like fully grasp that your words exist all over the world and people can like purchase and read them, it's mind-blowing. Like absolutely mind-blowing. I was like, people are literally reading the story that I wrote in all different corners of the world. It was the coolest thing ever to witness. And there were a lot of positives that came out of the pandemic with my debut experience. I was able to do author events. I mean, I met you through like who would have known, and I've just made some amazing relationships because of it. So I'm clinging to those silver linings, because it was a wild ride, very different from the book 2 experience, especially with a sequel as a book 2. I was just way more chill this time. But like I didn't know what to expect with Wings of Ebony, and I was just blown away. The whole thing, like just the fact that this exists now and it will be written on the hearts and minds of young people forever is just like mind blowing to me. Because this is the end.
I love you have just a much more optimistic take on the debut experience than I had. My first book, Brightly Woven, was published by Egmont USA, which was like a very small publisher. It no longer exists, very small print run. And I just remember there was like a weird quote to inject here. It's like a Katy Perry interview I read at some point where she was like talking about what happens when the album comes out after like all the promotion and all of the hype, and then it's just out and it just kind of is there. That's how I felt about like my debut. I was like, oh, you're racing and things are exciting and it's coming, and then all of a sudden the book is just there. So I think like you have the right attitude about the debut experience, whereas I think I was slightly more jaded because I worked in publishing, and so every Tuesday we had books come out. So like one of the things I've had to work really hard on was like, remembering that it's a special experience to have a book come out, because it became so like normalized to me from working in publishing that it like didn't feel like this big event, even when it was my book. Sounds like I'm very jaded, but yeah.
Well, I want you to know. Sorry, my baby's bringing me some water. Thank you, honey.
Oh, that's helpful.
I want you to know when I see your book is coming out, it is a very special day for me.
Oh,
I love your book.
Yeah, I like treat it more like a really happy thing now that I'm far removed from working in publishing. It was just like for a while there, I was like, this is nothing special. My book is one of 20 coming out on this day. Like, that's not a good attitude to have, even though it is like this really cool thing that happens. Anyway, so you like alluded to this a little bit, but I want to know how your experience was writing a sequel as book 2, or even, just book 2 in general, because they are notoriously hard. And one of the reasons I think for that is just that you have so much time to work on your first book. You're working on it for years, months, years before you sign with an agent, before you send it to the publisher, and then you're working on that one. And so you have a lot of time to really polish and think about that first book. And then all of a sudden you have a contractual due date for the next one. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, did you feel that pressure? How was it? How was sequeldom for you?
No. Yes and no. Getting the first draft out was okay because I knew what I wanted to do with it. But I was emotionally drained when I was writing it because it was summer 2020 and the world was on fire.
Yeah.
Revising it was a little bit harder because I just got too close to it and my bandwidth was so thin and the timeline is quicker. So like distance, I really need distance between drafts. And it was just like, it was so close, like reading it, I was like, wait. And there's a mystery thread in this. And with mystery, like, wait, do we know this? Do we not know this? And I'm dyslexic. So like literally, I was just like, look, my wires are crossed. So the revising was trickier, but getting it out was fine. It was cathartic too because I was writing justices I wish I could see in the real world, and so some of that was like a balm to my spirit, during that very hard time. But yeah, book 2 is hard. I mean, I've now moved on to my next series, which I've finished the first draft of the first book to trilogy, and getting that one out took way longer than book 2, but it was
interesting.
Easier. Like it was easier to execute. I just was being way more like finicky about things. Like I was looking at line level stuff, which I shouldn't in a first draft, but I couldn't help myself. I was world building my Wikipedia page for like 4 months. I was writing, literally I have probably 50,000 words in backstory.
That is goals. That is
absolutely so goals. Amazing though. Like I just want to get lost. So it took longer, but it was easier because it was just easier because I knew a little bit more what I was doing.
Yeah, so we have a lot of questions coming in about wanting to hear more about the new series. Can you talk about it at all, do you think? Is it the one that you pitched to me? Because that one was really cool.
Yes, trust me, you will get a copy. I will make sure you get a copy from my editor.
I'm so
I
excited.
cannot talk about it yet. My
Okay.
publisher intends to announce it strategically soon. But yes, it is a trilogy. It is by far my favorite thing I've ever written. I'm very excited. I'm creating a world, which is new for me, which is probably why I've written so much backstory, because I need to know
Yeah.
the histories and stuff. I mean, I feel like you do this really well. Like you feel like you have your world building is just so rich and deep.
I
And
don't do world building well.
yeah, I think you do.
It's like the product of so many drafts. It's the thing I struggle with, I think,
I feel like
probably
it's
the most.
I feel like it's my Achilles. And so when I picked this specific story for my next project, I like to challenge myself. So with Ashes of Gold, I was like, I want to challenge myself to write a twisty plot. So with this book, I was like, I want to challenge myself to really create a vast world. So I've been studying the Grishaverse for a very long time and some other worlds that I really love, and just looking at what gives those worlds depth and breadth and trying to, because I want to be able to write several books from this world. Like I want to create
That's cool.
a universe if I can. And so that's why I need that backstory, because like I need to fully grasp the histories, and there's like houses in this book. And so I've written like some of the dirty things the houses have done over the years that you like really know how they played out and like who hates who and why. And so yeah, I don't know. I'm having fun. I'm lost in this world. It's so lush and dark and decadent.
Such a good feeling. Honestly, like when you're you have to be a little bit in love with whatever you're working on, because it's like it is such a grueling road to like actually get it onto bookshelves in terms of like, you know, how many times you're reading it and editing it and taking it apart and rethinking things and all of that. So I think that's going to be so cool. And I love like really thinking deeply about backstory, because even if like you can only insert one line, like kind of like about something that happened in the history or whatever, it just like really adds color to the world and like makes it, as you were saying, feel really lived in and like an actual place, a character. I mean, you know, like a place where the reader would want to spend time. I think that's what's so exciting to me about this world. I like as a reader, I can't wait to like just get in there and live it with the characters.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's definitely different. It's also very romance heavy, which I love. Ooh. We have some forbidden enemies to lovers in there, which is delicious.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to be able to talk about it, and I will certainly tell you more about it privately.
So Reading Rapunzel, hello, asked if you could give each of your characters a theme song. What songs would you pick? Is there anything you wish you had known before being published? So 2 questions there.
I am really bad with song names, like so bad with song names. My best recommendation is to check out my Spotify playlist for Wings of Ebony.
Yeah.
So bad at song titles. Like I just like know like a piece of the chorus. And I'm like, yeah, that song. Like I never know the name of the song. But I can answer the second one. I'm so sorry, Reading Rapunzel. Is there anything you wish you'd known before being published? Yes, several things. So writing craft, a million things. But like about publishing in general, I would say that your debut novel is not your only novel, and it doesn't matter as much as it feels like it matters. I think debuts carry their debut on their shoulders, like I did, very heavily, because like it has to break out, it has to blah blah blah. But like so many of our favorite authors, these authors who have been in the game for a long time, like I don't even know what their first book was sometimes. It's like, because it's not until their 4th or 5th book that I found out about their books, and then I read their backlist, you know? So you just never know. It's more about consistency and longevity. And my mentor, Nick Stone, who's brilliant, has been telling me that, but you know, I'm thick-headed.
Yeah.
I finally get it now. Now that I'm on book, I have, I think, 9 contracted books at this point.
Oh my gosh. You have a couple more coming out this year, right?
I do. Oh my gosh, I almost grabbed it and showed you and then realized the cover.
You have a middle grade, and then is it nonfiction? Is that
so I'm ghostwriting a nonfiction. I can put a with credit on the front. I haven't decided or not, because it's very different from my brand. and it's in a whole different space. But I am ghostwriting that for my good friend who's like a sister to me. So, but that's like totally separate. The other projects are, I have 2 middle grades. They're a magic school series. The cover is literally in the process of being, the reveal is being set up right now.
Give us a new magic school that we can.
I'm very excited about it. It's a very grounded inner city magic school in the back of a hair salon. So it's fun. And it's just a silly book. It's so hilarious. Like laugh out loud. Hilarious. And then let's see. That's 2. And then Wings of Ebony, Ashes of Gold. Those are 4. Okay. So then my other 5 books. So my trilogy, that's 2 books. And then there's a top secret IP project that I took on because it's just incredibly historic for my community, but I cannot talk about it all. Like contractually have been like, can't say anything. And I don't even know when they're going to announce that. It'll probably be another 1.5 years before they say anything. It's actually almost done. I should be done with it in a few weeks, but I can't announce that yet. So that I took on as sort of a love child because I was just so honored to be able to be a part of something so historic. But then the other stuff, yeah, it's just my 2 middle grades and my trilogy. That are coming.
You're going to be busy. You are busy already.
Most of that stuff is done. It's so wild how far in advance you write a book and then it comes out and you're like, people are asking you questions about it. You're like, 2 years ago when I wrote this book, I don't remember.
Like, yeah, I almost feel like I need to start like writing notes to myself about like how to answer potential questions and like revisiting that down the line.
Yes, literally, because I'm so like lost sometimes.
Yeah. So, I have to say, I completely agree with you that like the real success in publishing is longevity. That is like the hardest thing to obtain. And a lot of it is, you know, beyond writing books that sell, like even if you have like a couple of misses that don't sell as well, like if you're a professional person who is like not necessarily like easy to work with, but just like kind to the people that you're partnering with at the publisher, like that will get you so far in life. I think a lot of authors maybe, I don't know, sometimes I feel like authors can be a little bit combative with publishers, and you know, sometimes you really have to like go to the mat to get what you need for your book, but other times I'm like, you know, it's a business arrangement. You have to like treat everybody with respect, and having like a good professional reputation will help sustain longevity. That's something that has become very clear to me as the years have gone on. But yeah, as you said, like your debut like does not have to hit the New York Times list for you to have a long and very successful and happy career. Mine sure did not. The Darkest Minds didn't hit the list when it first came out. Like it took 3 books. It hit the list with my second Darkest Minds book. And honestly, publishers love it when you're writing books that continue to like build sales wise, even if it's like small increments, whatever. Like they would much rather see a sales trajectory going like this, even if you're starting at like a lower. I'm getting like into, you know, I'm getting in the weeds here, but anyway, I am so happy that you.
That stuff's so fascinating.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you are already there, because I think that is a very hard lesson that everybody has to learn during debut year. I saw a question earlier. I know we have about, I would say maybe 10 more minutes here. Where was it?
Someone asked about my next series, the one that I can't talk about. It is YA.
Oh, good.
It is YA. Oh. Where did I get my water bottle?
Thank you for popping that one up. That was the one that I was looking for. What advice do you have for writers who are editing their books?
I got this from Walmart on the clearance rack like 5 years ago. That was another question in the chat.
Yeah.
Let me see. Advice for editing your book. You need space before you're ready to edit, first of all. And you have to break up with it. Like you can't love your book and edit it. You have to be able to turn off your writer love of your book and be able to just destroy it if that's what it takes. If it's too precious to you, you might not be ready to edit yet. That's just my take. But you've done this longer than me. What do you think, Alex?
Oh gosh. I went from someone who loved drafting, like I was all about writing that first draft and getting it out and fast drafting, to someone who vastly prefers to edit books now, because I think once you accept the fact that books are really made in the editing process, you're like okay with not having an amazing first draft because you know that you can make it better. But so it ended up that I had a really long break between when I turned in my first draft of my new YA that's coming out at the beginning of next year, Silver in the Bone. I turned in the first draft in June, but I didn't actually get notes for it until December. So, I am so used to publishing a book a year, which is amazing, but you really don't get time, as you were saying, to like really separate yourself from the manuscript. And during these like unexpected months that I had, I was like, oh my gosh, I've like brainstormed so many new ideas for it. I can like, the characters are like people to me now. It's so really setting the manuscript aside, and also just coming up with a plan that makes you feel organized, I guess, as you're approaching it. For me, I always do more of like a world, rules, character background, like a story Bible. I always do that for revision, so I can like constantly refer back to the story Bible to make sure everything's consistent. But yeah, revisions, it really just depends on the manuscript itself, wouldn't you say? It's sort of dependent on the story.
Well, what draft it is too.
Yeah.
And how fleshed out. I think too, it depends on if it's fantasy or not. I mean, I think when you're editing fantasy, like an entire consideration is, okay, what is the world? Is it second world? How do I make this world, believable so that you can taste it and touch it and smell it? And if it's not fantasy, if it's like, I think some of it is genre specific, I guess is what I'm saying too. And certainly I'm no expert. I mean, I've only have 2 books to work, but I do see that I'm learning more and more with each book, and seeing my grasp of the craft continue to grow. I actually was looking up, as I was finishing this first draft of this book for my new series, I was looking up just inspiration, and I was Googling you, because I do, like, I know we talk all the time. We're always very friendly, but I want you to know I admire you hugely, just like as an author, truly.
Thank you.
As a writer, and then just also as a professional in the industry. You have an energy about you that definitely chimes with what you were saying about reputation and stuff. You're great at that. So anyway,
I feel the same way about you, which is probably why we became pandemic pals.
Thank you. So I was looking up and I found an old blog post that you wrote.
Oh no.
Alex was so good. It gave me everything I needed, because I was getting in this draft and I hit 120K and I was like, I'm not even close to done.
Yeah.
I still have to do this and this and this, and I don't want to rush this part. And like, my friend was like, it's fine. Just she's actually a freelance editor. She's like, it's fine. Just finish and we'll revise. And I was like, I've never written a book this long. I can't do this. And I was just Googling and I found a blog post about you. And you were like, my critique partner, Sarah J. Maas, and I, and you were talking about how long your early drafts are. And I will never forget reading those numbers. And I closed that blog, never thought about my word count again. Didn't even think about it again. And I finished that sucker at 144, and I revised it down a little bit to about 140, somewhere in there. And I think it's great. So I guess my editor will tell me, but I was like, I could not write. Like, my brain was like, you have to stop. You're doing it wrong. And then when I read that blog post, it just like, the world just opened to me, and I just stopped fighting.
Welcome to the 500-page club.
Yes. Like, I had to just get it out, and then we can trim it later. So
yeah, I mean, the first draft of Silver in the Bone was before I sent it to my editor, I like forced myself to really trim it. It was almost 170,000 words. And I was like mad at myself, because at that point I had written basically 2 novels, like the length of 2 novels. So I was like, I gotta be better about like hitting my word target, or like I overplot. I've just like accepted that about myself. And I know my editorial process is just pulling back and like figuring out what I actually need in the story. So after this revision I did, it's actually down to 144 too. So that's great for me. That's like roughly.
I'm available if you need a reader. I like my 140K manuscripts.
Yeah. But that's like the length of the Darkest Minds books. Like, that's just, I think, a good length, especially if you're going like really in depth in the world. Do you as a reader want to stay in the world a little longer? Do you guys agree with that? Do you like long books, or do you prefer really like more in the 70. I don't know what that page number would be.
Fantasy.
Yeah, with fantasy, we have much more wiggle
Well, here's a question. Is your Silver in the Bone, is it 2 POV or 1?
I'm sorry, what?
Is it 1 POV?
It's 1.
Okay.
So but then this is my debate now for the sequel. I'm like, I might need another point of view because I don't know that I can tell the whole story without another one. Are you doing multiples for?
So my book started with a prologue character, and I realized that the prologue character needed to be present longer because you have the main character entering this glittering world, but this world is glittering and dark, and you get notes of that from her. But then I have little chapters from him. I think right now he has 4, maybe 5, and it shows the ugly underbelly of the world. And you can see how one is grafted under the other. So I like both of them there because I like the juxtaposition. And then, of course, everything comes to a cataclysmic kind of. So I think it works really well. And that character is probably one of my favorite characters to write. He's very good. I was very inspired by Tyrion Lannister, actually.
Ooh.
So he's very dark and gray and complex. I love him. I'm
so excited. This is going to be great. So did you find writing a duology challenging? I find it much harder to write than a trilogy, even though, there's a whole extra book in the trilogy just in terms of how my brain tends to plot story. Did you find writing a duology challenging, or are you finding the idea of writing a trilogy daunting? How are you feeling?
With Rues' book, it needed to be a duology because of the way I structured book 1. Mm-hmm. But if I could go back, I would definitely err towards 3, just because of the way it naturally breaks up. In my trilogy that I'm working on now, the break of 3 books works really beautifully with like the storyboard arc. And then there are other books that I want to tell from this world. And I think they work very well. Like that pacing works well to like build up those backstories.
That's so cool.
In 3 books. So we'll see what happens. It's a little ambitious. I'm a little intimidated, but I want to challenge myself,
it's good to be intimidated because that's how you're really pushing yourself and pushing your craft. So
I believe
I'm so excited to read this book. Okay, so let's see. Oh, thank you. What book are you recommending right now?
I'm looking. I have a whole stack here. I'll go with 2. One is contemporary and one is fantasy. For my sorry, hold on. Oh, I knew I should have had these closer to me. Okay, so for contemporary, I'm going to go with this one.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
I'm so excited. I just got off deadline and then released this book. And then in my personal life, it's been a mess this week, but this is what I'm doing next week. So I'm excited. So this one, which is out in March by Saba, this is All My Rage.
A lot of people are talking about being emotionally destroyed by that book as well. So I'm excited but terrified.
And then for fantasy, I would say this one, which just came out.
That one looks so good.
Came out the same day as Ashes, actually.
That's such a beautiful cover too.
Thick. Like, look at her. Fantastic blurbs, and Sulin is just a doll. But the world building is just absolutely delicious.
Luscious. That's what it sounds like. So the book I'm reading right now for my book club is All of Us Villains. Speaking of multiple points of view, this is actually this might be a good one for you to read too, just in terms of how they set up the magic system. It's a lot of like morally gray characters. Actually, they're all morally gray because they're competing in like murder tournament is how I would describe it. So it's similar to lore. If you liked lore, it's similar in that way where these families are all competing to get control of like what they call high magic. But all of the characters, I love the way that they write character descriptions in the book. Everyone is just like, do you guys know that meme that's like, ow, the edge? Like Alistair, one of the characters in this book, every time I read his chapter, I'm like, oh gosh, you're so goth. I love you so much. So it's a really it's a pretty quick read too. And we've had lots of good stuff to discuss in talking about it. So that's what I'm currently recommending and reading. But
I'm gonna grab it. I've seen it and I've heard a lot about it, but I haven't picked it up yet. But I definitely will.
Yeah, that one might be interesting for you because you're going a little more like right with this new one. So
yes, it's very interesting what's happening with this new one. I'm very curious to hear what my editor thinks. I sent it off days before my release came out, so it's been a busy year.
Oh, I can't believe it, and I feel like we're basically out of time now, right?
Yes, and the time flies when we're together.
I know the time flies when we're talking. I guess well, when we're talking. Yes. So I think yeah. Do you want us to wrap it up there? Do you want us to do like one more question?
I need you to answer one more question, both of you. So Laura has an amazing cover, and so do JL's. Both of those books are just, the covers are amazing. How much say did you guys have in this process of these covers?
You want to go first, Alex?
Yeah. So let me grab her. Just roll away. Come back. So this is the lore cover. I feel like I got blessed by the cover gods with this one. It just like fits the story so well. I love that you have the ancient meeting the modern. My publisher basically, we've been working together for a really long time. They know that I always have a million notes about covers. Even when I worked in publishing, my bosses would be like, you cannot submit all of these cover feedback notes. Like, you can pick 5 books that you can give cover feedback notes on. Like, that's it. I am very picky about my covers, so I feel very blessed that I got a lot of input in this. For example, I got to pick the eye featured, Laura's eye, because the one that they had originally used, or the digital artist had originally used, had like makeup on it. It was like this very beautiful, smoky kind of cat eye. And I was like, don't know that that works in this instance, but I like it. But I don't like it for this. So things like that where I'm very picky. But yeah, I was terrified because the first couple iterations of this cover, the way that the digital artist worked was that he was like, he did sort of like a 3D mock-up, and then he like sculpted it as like a model. And the model, I was like, oh my God, it looks like a Barbie head. What have we done? Like, it literally, because it just looks sort of plasticky and like had no detail or anything. And I was like, oh God, it's too late. I can't back out of this. And then finally he submitted the beautiful finished version that has like the marble texture and all of that too. So I was like, oh my God.
It's stunning. Like,
yes.
that book stands out every single place I go. Like, it is absolutely one of my
she kind of just like stares you down. She's like, oh, you're going to walk by?
No, I cannot pick it up. Like, it's stunning.
It's nice that it's a white cover too, because I feel like we get a lot of like very dark kind of purple and black covers in YA, and red covers now. But yeah,
this makes me want to pick your brain for my cover ideas, because I've already been asked, and I'm just like, I don't know. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I want it to
love covers. It's so bad.
So with these, Taj Francis is the artist who did these, and I basically gave, I knew I wanted a hoodie. I knew I wanted cuffs. With this one, they surprised me with the gold detailing.
It's so pretty, the foil.
Yeah, like, I didn't know it was going to be that dynamic. And like, when you turn her face, depending on how you turn it, you can see the magic. Like, it disappears and then it shows.
Those are some good cover specs on there.
Really, really cool. So with that one, I just gave, for the second book, I just gave direction on like the colors, because originally it was like kind of a faded blue and like a peach color.
Oh yeah,
I was like, let's go, like, because this is like hot pink.
Yeah,
and let's do like turquoise, and that really made it pop. And then they chose the copper to kind of complement the green tones, which I think works
just perfect. Like, I'm so glad they went with a more intense kind of teal, and the two covers just complement each other so beautifully. And I love that you see more of Rue in her face on the second one. Like you were saying with her arc, she sort of is like coming into her own and figuring out like, who she is within this world and what she can do with her power. So I think it's just like a perfect visual representation of her arc. Oh, one more quick question. Diana asked, can you choose who designs your covers, or is that a publisher thing? Do you want to explain?
Well, sometimes they'll ask if you have ideas for artists. I do think it depends on like, Alex, you've sold millions of copies, so they probably care about your opinion. My publisher listened to me. They were very gracious, but they usually have, I mean, the thing that a lot of people don't realize, I don't think, is like I didn't realize it either. Publishers actually are just as excited about a cover usually as the writer, as the author. Yeah. So they have like their own, like, I want to do this or I want to do that. So it tends to be a very collaborative process. Hopefully it should be. And you give feedback and they kind of give their idea, because they do take advice from sales and marketing about like what's going to pitch well and like what colors, are going to do well and like those kinds of things. So, but you can recommend, like, I definitely told them I gave them a list of names I loved, and my editor ended up picking somebody totally different who I am in love with. So I'm glad
you at least gave a sense of like what your idea was, which I think is perfect when it comes. It's almost easier to go into the cover design process without like a specific image in your mind, because I think you end up with a cover that really surprises you, because you're not trying to like match the vision in the head and somehow it never lives up to that.
Yes.
Yeah. Within each publishing house, they have a design department, and those are the designers that get assigned to your books, and then they hire, artists and whatnot. Usually it's sort of like, as you were saying, you can like give them names of artists, or they, in my case, they're like, we're thinking about these digital artists. Like, what do you think? Which is very nice to be asked. So there is like I think nowadays it's much more common for an author to be able to give feedback about the covers and to say, I think this is a problem or not. I love this. I don't love this. Can we adjust this? Because I think it's just so much easier now to do adjustments and Photoshop and all of that. It's not that big of a hassle to make those tweaks. But like, oh my gosh, as you were saying, so many people weigh in on the cover. It's not even just in-house people who can like torpedo a cover that you love. It's also like Barnes & Noble. If Barnes & Noble's like, this is not going to sell, or we think it should look more like this cover, they will completely go back to the drawing board to satisfy retailers. So
they will retitle your book.
Barnes & Noble. It's
like, nope, this is not what we're calling this.
I know. And then when like Borders was also in the mix, like that was a whole thing too. So yeah, it's really amazing that you and I have ended up with such fantastic covers. I feel very happy for us.
Very grateful.
Because that's like the one thing to go to the mat over, really, is like fighting for a good cover, because that's the book's primary marketing tool. So
it really is, and it makes a huge difference, I think, on a shelf.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. That was so fantastic. I loved it so much. I really appreciate you coming out and speaking with us. And I want to remind people that they get to do this because you buy their books. So please buy more of their books. I'm going to put up a little place where you can go. Both their books are listed on this page. You can pick all of them. That would be helpful. It also supports the bookstore if you buy books too, and we can bring more events to you. So thank you so much for coming out tonight. You guys all have a good night. I'm going to end it right here.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Alex. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Congratulations on finishing your series.